Okay. Sige. Share screen. Oops. Screen 1. Oh, nasi-share na, no? Naka-share na ba yung screen? Nakikita nyo? Okay, great. So, discuss natin yung exam. So, yung exam, naka-random yung random yung questions ng order. Tapos random yung order ng choices natin. So, let's see. First is dito sa exam ko na inopen. What does NoSQL stand for? So, NoSQL stands for not only SQL. Okay. Questions? Wala. Okay. So, it stands for not only SQL. Kasi, so when you think about it, MongoDB is document-based, di ba? So, it's a NoSQL database. So, hindi siya nagsi-SQL. Document-based siya. Yung gamit natin is yung mga JSON na queries. But, may mga kinds of NoSQL databases na gumagamit ng SQL. For example, Hive. Right? So, Hive, ano pa ba? Phoenix, which is on top of HBase. So, yung mga frameworks na yun, gumagamit sila ng, ay yung mga libraries and frameworks na yun, gumagamit sila ng SQL, yung mga databases na yun. So, SQL-like na syntax. So, yun yung ginagamit nila. So, may SQL ka pa rin kahit na NoSQL database. Although, not all NoSQL databases. But, if we say not only SQL, then it includes also the SQL-like na mga databases. Yun. Next is, what is the process of adding more computers to a cluster to add more computing power called? Adding more computers to a cluster is horizontal scaling. Okay. So, ayun. So, this is the type of scaling that we usually use for big data. Okay. So, and this is usually what the scaling for NoSQL databases are. For example, si Mongo, when you scale Mongo, what you do is you don't increase the RAM and CPU of your machine. Instead, you replicate the data across multiple clusters. Okay, yun. So that's horizontal scaling. Next, what function do you use to delete documents from a collection? So what we use is delete. So db collection name dot delete. So remove is valid, but the instructions natin is read the questions carefully and select the most correct answers. Remove is a deprecated function in MongoDB. So the use of delete one and delete many is preferred over remove. Question so far? Wala. Okay, sige. Let's move on. Okay. What else pala? Sige, balikan muna natin dito. Nakalimutan. Vertical scaling, mamaya makikita natin. Horizon scaling, feel ko may na-bait dito. Dapat horizontal scaling, hindi horizon scaling. Natural scaling, that's some music. Dito naman, may reduce talaga na command, but hindi ito yung nagdi-delete. Truncate naman is available for other databases. Meron ba sa Alam ko meron si MongoDB, pero hindi yun yung command. Sa ibang databases may actual truncate commands like sa SQL or sa Hive for example. May actual truncate commands and sa HBase, sa big data database na yun, may truncate na command. Yung truncate, pinaka-truncate dito ni truncate kasi usually works with tables. But we don't have that. We don't have tables in Mongo. We have collections instead, but we don't have truncate collection. So, hindi siya valid. Now, next is ito. How do you import Mongoose in an application? So, we use the require command. Na-open nyo naman yung wiki siguro. So, yung nakita nyo na require yung ginamit. Hindi required. Last session, may nagkamali na required yung nalagay. Kaya hindi nag-work. Required dapat. At also, hindi import. And also, dapat yung pinapasok nyo dito is a string. Okay? Next, what is MongoDB? MongoDB is a document-based NoSQL database. Okay? So, ano pa ba yung iba dito? So, yung document based natin is para it's based on a JSON document form. So, JSON siya. So, that's our document. That's the basic um, object sa natin, sa MongoDB database. Yung a key value store, a key value database is may para siyang map na bibigay ka ng key and bibigyan ka ng value. So, yun yung laman niya. Okay. So it doesn't. So a certain key will not have will not have different fields. It just has a single value. Pero syempre, a single value can be like a single string, right? Tapos yung string na yun, pwede mo na lang i-convert to a JSON document, for example. So that's one thing. Pero hindi ka makakapag-query like ano yung laman ng JSON document mo kasi string lang naman yung laman niya sa key value store. Right, for example. Now, tapos wide column big table is para siyang SQL in that meron tayong tables. Pero yung difference dito is hindi fixed yung schema. So, hindi siya katulad ng Mongo. Kasi si Mongo document based. Ito table talaga siya. Table din siya. Tapos yung laman ng table mo is mga rows. Pero hindi ka constrained sa columns mo. Hindi constrained yung columns mo. So example would be big table tapos HBase. Graph-based, ito naman yung may nodes ka and yung need mo dito is yung mga relationships with the nodes. So sa MongoDB hindi ganoon. Hindi tayo graph-based. So yung mga graph-based is something like Neo4j for example. Tapos Apache Giraffe. Yun yung mga graph-based na mga database. So, yung importante dito is yung mga relationships with the nodes. Yun. So, like, if you're building, for example, a social network, you can use a graph database. Yun. Questions? So, remove is still a possible answer. But, sir, yes. Still a possible answer, but select the most correct answers. Since remove is deprecated, that is a less correct answer. Okay? Okay, next. What function do you use to update the documents from a collection? It's update. What do you call the feature characteristic of MongoDB which allows it to be constantly up and working for use with barely any downtime? That is high availability. Okay. So if something is constantly up, like barely may downtime siya, that's what we usually call that a highly available system. So it's called high availability. Okay. Then next is, what is the process of adding more cores and or RAM to a single machine to add more computing power called? Yan yung yung vertical scaling. Okay. Vertical scaling is adding more resources to a particular machine, to a single machine. Okay. Next is, what kind of data is ideal for MongoDB? Okay. So ganito ah. Lahat ng to, again, like katulad ng dun sa delete remove na lahat to valid for, lahat to ay kayang, well, normal data. Well, lahat to ay nasusupport ni MongoDB. But the question is, what kind of data is ideal for MongoDB? So yun. So in this case, semi-structured. Okay. So you can put semi-structured data and unstructured data in MongoDB, but it's best suited for semi-structured data. Okay. When you say unstructured data, ito yung mga data like photos, like videos. Bakit sila unstructured? Kasi when you open it up, wala kang structure na makikita. It's just binary. It's binary. So pag i-open mo yung image in a text editor, almost wala kang structure na makikita. It's all binary. Structure data naman is stuff like, alam mo na yung schema. The schema is fixed. Fixed yung schema mo. So may structure ka talaga na ifa-follow. So this kind of data is suited for SQL databases, relational databases like Microsoft Access, for example, or Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite, mga ganon. Unstructured data is best suited to be stored in file storage. So, like an example would be Amazon S3, Google Cloud Storage, Azure File Storage, or Minio, which is not a cloud-based na solution. So yun, yun yung best suited for unstructured data. Isa-store mo lang yung unstructured data mo. For semi-structured data, yun yung specialty ni MongoDB. Semi-structured data is data wherein you don't have a fixed structure. Like flexible yung structure ng data mo. It could change. Okay. Like sa structured data, your data is fixed na. Like the schema shouldn't really change. The structure of the data shouldn't really change. Sa semi-structured data, pwedeng may madagdag na fields, pwedeng may matanggal, pwedeng may mag-change. Yun yung semi-structured data. Pero may structure nonetheless, may fields ka pa rin, etc. Sa unstructured data, wala talaga. Like, it's just a photo, wala kang fields. Wala kang fields and values. Puro siya binary. It's all binary down there. Next is, what do you call the mechanism by which data is copied over to other servers so they can be swapped when the main server is down? That is replication. Okay. Next is, how do you start a connection with MongoDB using Mongoose? So that's connect. And then what's the default URL for MongoDB? That is MongoDB localhost 27017. Okay? Yun. And what is the name of the Node.js library we use to connect to MongoDB? That is Mongoose. Actually, Mongo is also a valid answer, but Mongoose uses Mongo, tapos hindi tayo nagmamana-mano ng Mongo. You rarely use Mongo talaga per se, like yung Mongo library talaga, because it's the pain in the ass to work with. So we usually use Mongoose as the wrapper for that. What do you call the feature characteristic of MongoDB which allows it to immediately recover and serve data the moment a failure occurs? That is fault tolerance. So it's able to tolerate failures in the server. For example, if one of the servers go down, mangyayari is one of the other servers will be the one who will be receiving the requests. Okay? May papalit sa kanya pag mamatay siya. Okay? Next is querying a model in Mongoose returns an what? It returns a promise. Okay. So the promise can eventually resolve to an object, an array, or whatever value. But first it is a promise. Promise muna siya. Then later on, for example, pag matapos na yung request to MongoDB, it will reserve to a particular value. Okay? So first promise muna siya. Next is what function do you use to get the documents from a collection? We use find. Find yung ginagamit natin dito. Then next is what function do you use to add documents to a collection? We use insert. And again, yung variants niya. So, insert one, insert many. Same din sa update kanina. We have update one, update many. Sa ano din, kaya more valid din na answer si delete kasi mas malapit siya sa other APIs. So like si delete, may delete one, delete many. Si remove, wala siyang remove one, remove many. It's just remove. And it's also deprecated na. Meaning, in later versions of MongoDB, remove will be removed. Remove si remove. So, hindi na siya magiging part ng MongoDB API. Yun. So, why prefer horizontal scaling or vertical scaling? May multiple answers dito. Number one is it's cheaper. Kasi it's running on commodity hardware. Kaysa it's running on commodity hardware, maraming computers instead of more expensive na GPUs or CPUs and then RAM. Okay? So, it's cheaper to use multiple computers. And then it has less computational and resource limitations. So this is because theoretically you can only fit so much in a particular machine, in a single machine. But theoretically you could have infinite amounts of computers in a particular cluster. So may less limitations ka. So yun yung answer. Easier to use. Nah, there's not really a metric for this. Pero easier to set up, it's definitely easier to set up a vertical scaling it's a vertical scaling na scaling. Mas madali magdagdag ng RAM sa isang virtual machine. Mas madali magdagdag ng CPU sa isang virtual machine. Mas mahirap mag-set up ng horizontal scaling. Lalo na if local ka gumagawa. Sa cloud, madali lang siya. Pero if locally siya ginagawa, mas madali magdagdag ng RAM or CPU sa isang machine kaysa magkuha ng multiple machines at mag-connect sa network. Tapos i-manage mo pa like if mamatay yung isa, i-connect mo pa. Yun. Hindi siya easier to set up. Pero if we're using Mongo, this is provided to us out of the box. Pero technically, mas mahirap siya i-set up. Pinapadali lang talaga yung buhay natin ni Mongo. Which is an advantage of Mongo. Kasi for example, MySQL hindi siya nagsusupport ng replication. So you won't have multiple servers na may MySQL or the other relational database servers. What you do instead is sharding, which is break down your data. You break down your data to multiple servers. Pero pag mawala yung server na yun, goodbye data. Okay. Sa replication, which is ginagawa ni MongoDB, is nawawala yung pag mawala yung isang server, yung other server may copy din ng server na yon. may delay to some extent yung pag-copy, pag-replicate ng data to another server, pero it's just milliseconds, depende sa internet mo. Questions? Sir, tama ako dun sa fault tolerance pero mali yung nakamark. Ay, joke lang, tama pala ako. Nice. Pero natawa ako dun sa nabate ng Horizon. Horizon scaling. Anyway, sige. What's the default port for MongoDB 27017? Does MongoDB have a flexible schema? Yes, it does. Hindi rigid yung schema ni MongoDB. So that's it for a exam. So hindi ko to isa-submit kasi maapektuhan yung metrics ko. Makikita natin dito yung summary. Tada! Ito yung ano natin. So saan kayo most nagkamali? What function do you use to delete from a collection? Tapos why prefer horizontal scaling? Mhm. Expected that. Querying a model in Mongoose returns aawat. Okay. So reasonable. Reasonable. Ito yung most na so tatlo nakasagot nito, tatlo nakasagot. Ito dalawa lang. Oops, sorry. Tingnan natin analytics ng sorry. Ay, galing. Marunong kayo mag-Google. Mongoose, perfect. May nagsagot ng no SQL na wala talagang SQL. Okay. I think inulit-ulit ko to nung first class natin. Not only SQL yung meaning niya. Okay. Vertical scaling, perfect. Okay, may nagsagot ng horizontal scaling. May na-confuse ng konti. That's fine. Ito yung nabait. Mongoose, perfect. Okay, so nakita nyo yung ano natin, code natin. Mongo Connect. Search, okay. May nabait dito sa search. Update, perfect. May nabait sa add. Remove, ang raming sumugot ng remove. Dapat tiningnan nyo din na si remove deprecated nung nag-google kayo. Sure ako, pag nung nag-open kayo, yun yung unang lumabas. Pero sana binasa nyo onwards na like deprecated si remove. Tapos we never used remove sa ano natin, sa code natin. Tingnan niyo yung wiki natin, delete yung ginamit natin. Okay? Yun. Nagkamali dito. Dapat kasi both sila selected para may points. Default port, perfect. Querying a model returns a string. Nope, dapat promise talaga. It does not return a string. Kasi what if may integer tayo, like for example. Pero promise talaga. Promise talaga yung i-return niya. Promise. Promise, guys. Tapos default URL, perfect. Good job. High availability, may nabit sa high uptime. Fault tolerance. Yes. Replication, may nabit sa cloning. Cloning term natin sa Git. Right? Sa Git yun. Nagko-clone tayo ng repo. Unstructured data, may nabit sa unstructured data. We use semi-structured data. Sa unstructured data is yung mga images, videos, na pag i-open mo sila, it's a binary. Wala kang fields, wala kang values. It's all binary. Yun. And perfect. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Hmm. Anyway, don't worry. May chances kayo makabawi next time. Sorry. Hmm. Sorry, wait lang ha. Tatlo yung na-mark ko dun sa multiple answers kaya mali. Yes. Hmm. SKL. Sige. Tatlo yun. Yeah. Dapat dalawa lang. Hmm. Say, what do you think about the exam? Retro na lang tayo. May iba pa kayong share about sa exam? Kahit hindi questions. Kahit reklamo nyo. Masyado bang maraming trick questions? Nabait ba kayo? Yeah, medyo confusing yung iba. Which is on purpose. Kasi like naisip ko masyado nang madali yung exam kasi pwede kayong mag-google eh. Right? So everything's there. So you have to look better. You have to find answers better for the exam. Ikaw yung isa sa mga nagbaliktad, yung dalawang nagbaliktad sa vertical to horizontal. Again, vertical is isipin nyo, yung magandang ano nito is parang vertical, nagsa-stack ka. You're stacking. May dinadagdag ka ng dagdag sa taas. You keep adding more and more and more. Nagsa-stack ka ng RAM, for example. Nagsa-stack ka ng CPU. Kaya when you think about it, para siyang stack of pancakes. Dadagdag ka ng RAM, ng CPU. Tapos pataas siya ng pataas, kaya vertical. Okay? Yun yung isang ano, yun yung ano ko, yun yung analogy ko for vertical scaling. Parang nagsistack ako ng pancakes pataas. Padagdag-dagdag ako ng RAM. It's like a pancake stack of RAM and CPUs. Dumadagdag yung capacity, ay yung processing power ng yung machine. That's vertical scaling. So horizontal scaling, like same level sila lahat pero marami. So horizontal yung paglaki. Like magkakatabi sila, for example, para magkakatabi sila na computers, paparami na paparami, magkakatabi. Kaya horizontal scaling. Parang imagine a line na may ano ka, may computer ka. Then when you want to scale that, you add another computer sa katabi niya. Then add another computer sa katabi niya if mag-scale ka. So magkakatabi lang sila on a line. So yun mahaba. Na-delete yung gamit. Ba't na remove? Talaga? Nag-remove tayo? Talaga. I guess, oo. Tapos sinabi na ano, nag-remove tayo, then nagkaroon ng ano, ng warning then lumabas yung warning na sa CLI. Sabi sa CLI na remove is deprecated. Use delete one or delete many instead. Naalala niyo yun? Mistake, one of the concepts para we won't make the same mistake of change as possible. Instead of the most ideal one. Yeah, in-emphasize ko kasi yung ano eh. In-emphasize ko yung how to use Mongoose talaga. Itong mga other ano natin, yung other concepts na pinag-usapan natin, uh, we talked about it sa first na ano, sa first na session. We used the remove function. Tapos lumabas yung ano, lumabas yung deprecated na error. So remove, tapos pinasabi niya na ano, use delete one or delete many. Okay lang, bawi-bawi tayo next time. Was more emphasis on some of the concepts. Okay, so anong concepts yung gusto niyong pag-usapan natin ngayon para clarification tayo? Kasi sometimes yung ano ko is hindi kayo nagtatanong masyado. So I don't know what you want to talk about. So in this case, what do you want to talk about? Tapos clarify tayo. Clarification tayo. Yung mga functions sa COVID. Yes, okay. Let's go. Punta natin yung mamaya. Pero okay, what else? Para i-batch natin to. What else? Anyone else? Ano pa yung mga concepts na gusto nyong i-emphasize? Yung mga concepts dito, yung mga hindi mongoose, hindi yung mga hindi code related. Diniscuss natin to nung first meeting. So I guess yeah, we should have had more emphasis to it. Pero may slides tayo eh. Nandun yung ano, other stuff like high availability, vertical scaling, etc. etc. Pero anyway, sige, ano pa yung concepts na gusto nyong maano? Magtanong kayo ngayon para later on wala kayong issues. Kasi sometimes like nafe-feel ko may questions kayo pero hindi kayo nagtatanong. So like I don't know what to anong ano yung di nyo naiintindihan na part kasi hindi kayo nagtatanong. I need to know what you don't know or ano yung hindi pa clear para makarify natin. So anything else? Yung mga functions sa COVID, okay, yes. Balikan natin yan. But what else? Okay, ganito. Alam mo nyo ba yung deprecation? Okay, sorry. Maybe my bad na nag-assume ako na alam niyo yung deprecation. When you say kasi deprecation, when a function is deprecated, it's... Okay, sorry. Oh, so, nag-assume ako na alam niyo yung deprecation. When you say kasi something is deprecated, when a function is deprecated, like for example, gumamit ko yung API. Like for example, ginamit natin si remove. Tapos sinabi niyang remove is deprecated. Tapos may red na message doon or yellow message. When it says deprecated, it's still valid. Okay? You can use it, but in the next version of that application, it will be removed. Okay? For example, si remove is deprecated. Okay? In the next major version of MongoDB, wala na si remove. Hindi na siya valid. So usually what developers do is sasabihin nilang this is deprecated. Use these instead. Use delete, for example, use delete one or delete many instead. Tapos, in the next major version ni next major version ni MongoDB, wala na si remove. Yes. So pag ginamit nyo si remove, sasabihin sa inyo yung ano, sasabihin sa inyo yung error na ano siya, ay hindi naman siya error, warning siya. Sasabihin niya deprecated si remove. So, pag mag-upgrade kayo ng Mongo, mababasag application nyo. So that's what the deprecation is. It says na at a later date, at a future date, wala na yan. Wala na yung function na yan. So when you try to use it, hindi siya syntax error. Ano yung term nun? Hindi ko alam yung term nun. Hindi siya kasi syntax error. It's parang gumagamit ka ng function na that doesn't exist. Hmm. Yep. Yeah, use delete in the future just to be safe. Use other functions aside from the deprecated function just to be safe. Apart from just to be safe, hindi lang siya safe eh. Kasi parang given na talaga siya once mag-upgrade ka, once the update the API, given siya na mawawala. So hindi lang siya to be safe, it's a definite thing na mangyayari. Magiging safe lang siya if wala kang plans mag-upgrade ng Mongo. If wala kang plans na mag-upgrade ng Mongo, you can keep using it. But if may plans ka mag-upgrade ng Mongo, hindi siya safe. Yan. So, okay. So, sorry. My bad na di ko na-explain yung deprecation. Nag-assume lang ako na alam nyo. So, that's what deprecation is. So, again, pag may ma-encounter kayo, maraming ganun eh. Like, when you open up old code, tapos i-run nyo, sometimes sa console, may lumalabas na mga this function is deprecated, this function is deprecated. Tapos, pinapalitan sa inyo. At best case, gagana rin yung code. May warnings lang. Worst case, sasabog yung application. Like, ano ba yung example ngayon? Hindi yun yung magagets yung example. Sa React kasi maraming deprecated na functions na alam ko may mga gumagamit pa. Tapos, pag di sila tumitingin sa console, so pag tinitingnan nila, pag tinitingnan mo, may mga yellow na sinasabi na deprecated na yung function, pero ginagamit pa rin nila. But, so, no, hindi na dapat siya ginagamit, mga ganun. So, pinapalitan na dapat sila ng mga functions na almost same yung capabilities. Pero, function na almost same yung capability. Pero, yung underlying siguro na implementation, or hindi na siya talaga dapat ginagamit. Which is, okay. Did you hear, narinig niyo ba yung sinabi ko kanina? I talked about this eh. Okay. So, if MongoDB is best suited to semi-structured data, which is best suited to unstructured data? Again, sinabi ko kanina, if it's unstructured, you use something like a file storage. So, you use something like AWS S3 for Amazon. For Microsoft, we have Azure Blob Storage. And then for Google, we have Google Cloud Storage. If you want it locally, you can have something like Minio. Nakita niyo yung screen ko, no? Min.io. Nag-iba na yung itsura. Kubernetes native na siya, char. Pero you can run this locally. Okay. So, what an object storage is for example, meron akong file na like video.mp4, for example. So, I have a file like that. So, i-upload ko siya. Dun sa file storage. Mas detail po yung... sige, wait lang. Okay, yes. Sige, wait lang. Patapusin niyo ako. So, unstructured is use a file storage. Yes. And then, for example, mag-upload ako ng file. Mangyayari is, for example, meron akong video.mp4. Yung mangyayari, for example, is magkakaroon tayo ng URL. For example, HTTP localhost. Sabihin natin 8080 / object bucket slash b1, sabihin na lang natin, video.mp4. For example, pwede tayong, after natin ma-upload, magiging available na sa video.mp4 over this link. Okay, available na siya dito sa link na to. So yun yung object store natin. So instead of creating a server yourself, makikita mo na siya dito. And then you can manage it. You can manage it manually. And automatically din. So like, tas may mga libraries available na madali na lang siya ma-work with. So like, specify mo lang yung bucket name, tapos yung video, then makukuha mo na yung file. So that's how you usually deal with unstructured data. You add it in an object store. So when we say bucket, ito lang yung lalagyanan, parang folder lang siya. Yung difference lang kasi is a bucket, yun yung pinaka top level, tapos a bucket can have multiple folders. Okay? So instead of nandun lang siya sa bucket na yun, sa top level ng bucket, pwede tayo magkaroon ng bucket v1 slash videos slash video.mp4. So may folders tayo inside that bucket. Tapos we can have versions of that bucket or that versions of a particular file na nakastore. Gets? So again, if you're working with unstructured data, you upload it to an object store. Para lang siyang folder, but then it's available over the web. Available siya over the web, or kung may libraries ka, you can just connect to your object store, tapos makukuha mo na yung data mo. And ang advantage nito, may mga optimization silang ginagawa. For example, nako-compress yung file mo, for example. Tapos bumibilis yung transfer. Tapos if you're transferring over the web, you won't, like, it's difficult to just have a connection like an FTP connection, like computer to computer. No, what you do is usually you send files over the web. So nagda-download ka from a website, right? And yun. Okay, so taas tayo. I'll answer your questions one by one. Gets ba, Basilio? MongoDB is for semi-structured na may fields tayo, pero hindi fixed, flexible. Okay? That's yun yung best suited for MongoDB. For unstructured data, which we do not have, unstructured data, for unstructured data which we do not have fields, tapos binary lang yung laman niya when you open it, for example, in a code editor, then you use something like a file storage or a blob storage. Unstructured po ba, does that mean that the data doesn't have a key or a context? I don't get what you mean by context. Pero basically, like, means the data doesn't have a key or a context. Unstructured is basically like, pag i-open mo yung file, wala siyang structure. Like, try opening an image in VS Code. So, makikita mo is puro gibberish. That's binary basically na ini-interpret ni VS Code. But then wala siyang structure. Almost walang structure. Almost walang structure. I say that kasi yung only structure that you have is probably the header. Image files kasi or media files have a header, yung pinaka top na line that serves as metadata. They tell whatever is reading the file what kind of file it is. Like, is it a JPEG, is it a PNG, kahit na walang extension ng file. So it's able to determine that from the header ng media file mo. So yun lang yung pinaka-structure, but everything else is just gibberish when you open it. Okay. So yun yung unstructured. Wala kang keys, wala kang values, wala kang fields. That's unstructured data. And then relational DBMS for structured. Yes, perfect. Gets. Okay, Basilio, gets. Relational DBMS for structured data. Semi-structured data for sa MongoDB or the other NoSQL databases. For unstructured data, you use blob storage or file storage. Blob means binary large object. Okay. Blob means binary large object. It's basically a file. That's what basically means. It's a file. A blob is a file. Yung may differences lang sa kaya may sinasabi silang blob storage tapos file storage. Kasi usually pag blob storage, meron ka nitong link na http localhost slash blah 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 slash video.mp4. Sa file storage, what happens is you directly connect to the server where the file is, tapos na-open mo yung folder, which is not useful most of the time. Which is pretty useless most of the time. Yun. Akala ko yung nasa schema. Yes, oo. Yes, tama ka, Tomas. Walang schema si unstructured data. And well, to be fair, wala din namang schema si halos walang schema si semi-structured data. Almost walang schema. Yung schema niya is super flexible. Pero yung unstructured, wala talagang ka-form whatsoever. Okay, sa slides, medyo detail po sana yung PDF, PowerPoint. Okay, so this is okay, I know we have to Google things more. Yes, but what I need is Ask Me. Yung PDF ko talaga and PowerPoint is decoration lang. Like super decoration lang sila para may lang, para may ah tawag nito, placeholders tayo. But so I don't really put details in my slides. So if you want details, you ask me. So you ask questions. Like ngayon yung ginagawa nila. They're asking questions. So you ask questions. If there's something, I'm trying to explain the things that you haven't heard of. Like, pero, well, sorry, miss ko kanina yung yung deprecation. I assume na alam niyo yung deprecation. Uh, but stuff like, hindi niyo pa narinig maybe like blob. Ito, in-explain natin. So, if may di kayo na gets, ask questions. Okay. I'll try to explain things that feel ko din yung naintindihan. Pero sometimes I'll have assumptions na naintindihan nyo na to. So, ask. If may questions kayo, magtanong kayo. Okay. So, ito yung retrospective natin. If di nyo magets, ask me. Don't rely on the PowerPoint. Anyway, any more questions? Magtanong na kayo. Gets naman, 'di ba? Okay, gets na yung structured, unstructured, tapos semi-structured. Okay. Again, unstructured is wala kang structure, walang ka-schema. It's just gibberish when you open it. Structured data is you have a strict schema, you have a schema, it's fixed. It's a real schema na the data really has to follow it. Semi-structured again is flexible schema or walang schema. Pero may structure of some sort, may fields ka pa rin. You can still query your data. Okay? You can still search for your data. Okay? Sa unstructured kasi paano mo query yung image? When you open it, it's gibberish. How do you query it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ask me. Ask me Ask me questions if may di kayo naiintindihan. So may questions ka ba, Valerio? Yes, kaya nga. So ask me questions. I'm trying to explain the jargon that I've been talking about before. So like explain natin dito ngayon yung deprecation tapos yung blob. So if may other pa kayo na questions, now is the time to ask. Yes. Oh, yeah. That miss ano ka din to. This is one of my misses. Parang nag-assume ako na marunong kayo mag-JS kasi may subject kayo na JS before. So di pala kayo tinuruan ng main JS. So tinuro sa inyo yung JS na JS na regarding sa web lang, hindi kayo tinuruan ng core JS. Would it be possible to focus on database functions first? Okay, sure. So anong parts ng database functions yung gusto nyong yung pag-usapan? Kasi na-discuss na natin lahat eh. That's it. So kung yun yung pag-uusapan natin, we are actually done. Pero yung problem is, paglabas niyo yung class na to, hindi niyo magagamit si Mongo if hindi niyo may integrate anywhere. Pero sige, if you want to focus on first, what do you want to talk about on database functions? Yun yung issue kasi yung goal ko dito is actually marunong kayo after ng course, marunong kayo mag-integrate ng JS or whatever programming language to to MongoDB. Kasi after ng class nito, kung hindi kayo marunong mag-integrate, useless din. But, pero sige, anong parts ng DB yung gusto niyong pag-usapan? Clarifications tayo. Ayun. How can we integrate po sa HTML? Okay. Yung plan ko sana is I'll ease you in. Dahan-dahanin natin kasi baka mabigla kayo dito sa paano mag-integrate sa HTML. But okay. Uh, let's have a high-level overview. Let's try drawing stuff. Sige, may questions pa kayo? Like any question really. Like ano pa yung di nyo naiintindihan? Yung JS sa labas ng folder ng Netflix and it's not working. I don't get what you mean. Pero anyway, sige, mag-draw tayo. Don't cancel. Create new diagram. Blank diagram. Sige, something like, pangit. Sabihin natin, ito si MongoDB. It. This one's better, I guess. On. Mm, yung dito. Black, yes. Palaki natin ng konti. 64. Masyado malaki. 32. Yun. Hmm, tingnan mo yung error kung ano yung ano, kung ano yung error na sinasabi. Anyway, sige. Okay, sige. May MongoDB tayo dito, then may server tayo. So, sabihin na lang natin node to. 32. Unito. Sige, duplicate. HTML. Sige, sabihin na natin HTML siya. Hindi masyadong technical. Wait, sorry. Pangit. Pangit pa rin. Sige lang. Uh, okay. Nakikita nyo ba? So, ganito yung nangyayari. So, for example, mag-insert sa HTML, mag-insert tayo. Mag-insert tayo ng ano, ng, wait, meron pala dito. 16. So, sa HTML, for example, ano siya, mag-add ng add a movie. Mag-add tayo ng movie. So, mangyari is HTML, so may form tayo, mag-add tayo ng movie. Pag submit natin, isesend niya kay Node. Tapos si Node naman, gagawa siya ng query na mag-add ng movie. Like yung ano, something like movie dot insert name, a title, Titanic, whatever. For example, ganito. Dito na lang. Dito. Sige. So, pag add nat after si HTML, magre-request siya na mag-add ng movie na Titanic. Then, pagdating kay Node, which is yung JS natin, yung JS natin sa server, iraran niya tong movie.insert Titanic. And then, ito yung part, ito yung to. Runs query. Okay, runs query. And then, uh, movie is inserted. Movie. Movie is inserted. Okay? Ganun yung nangyayari. And then after that, so after natin wait, lagyan na lang natin dito. After mag-add ng movie, again, add ng movie, si server natin magra-run ng query na ira-run niya yung movie.insert title Titanic. And then, i-insert si movie kay MongoDB. Now, what happens next is step 4, returns movie details. So yung movie details na to, hindi lang to yung yung information about kay movie na yung title niya is Titanic. I-return din niya kung nag-succeed ba or nag-fail. Tapos, next is 5 processes movie details and handles errors. Actually, ito kayo na talaga bahala dito kung ano yung gagawin. So like pagdating ng movie details, so kung nag-succeed ba yung paglalagay kay MongoDB. If nag-succeed siya, handle natin. So gagawin natin is processes and returns. So, ipaprocess natin, then ibabalik natin kay HTML yung details. Or, i-return natin yung error. Magbabalik tayo ng error. Then, last step is, oops, mali. Oops. Is step 6, display new movie. Oops, I don't need to save this. Or save ko na lang. MongoDB integration. Okay. Daanan ulit natin. So again, a scenario natin is mag-a-add tayo ng movie from HTML. So, sa HTML, mag-a-add ng movie. So, mangyayari is para magsasubmit ng form or something. And then, pagdating kay, yung form request na yun, yung submit ng form nyo, yung data pupunta kay Node.js server. Okay? Tapos, si Mongoose, gagamitin natin to run itong movie.insert since naka-receive siya ng request na kailangan ng Titanic na movie, magra-run siya ng movie.insert tapos yung title. After that, is-send, since nag-query siya, yung query mabibigay kay MongoDB. Tapos, i-insert ni MongoDB yung movie sa movies na collection. Once ma-receive ni MongoDB yung movie, yung request, once ma-okay siya or hindi ma-okay, ibabalik yung movie details. Movie details like yung title niya, ano pa yung fields, and then if nag-succeed ba or hindi. And then pagbalik kay server, iha-handle niya kung nag-succeed or hindi. So kung nag-fail, edi magbabato siya ng, yung i-return niya dito is error message. If nag-succeed siya, yung ibabato niya is yung actual details ni movie. Now since na yung detail, since na okay yung ano, yung request for example, na-return yung movie details dito, i-display na siya sa HTML. Yun po ba yung yes, yung may try catch? So yung try catch mo, mangyayari yung try catch mo dun kay ano, kay server, kay Node.js server, or kung ano mang server yung gamit mo, PHP, ano pa ba? No, C Sharp, ASP.NET, whatever. Whatever na server na gamit mo, dun mo i-handle yung ano, yung error na binibigay ni Mongo. Kasi you can't directly connect from HTML to Mongo. Yung gagawin mo from HTML, ko-connect ka to a server, then si server yung may capability to connect to MongoDB. Okay? So, hindi ka pwede direkta mag-connect from HTML to MongoDB. Kaya dumadaan tayo dito. Okay? That's why dumadaan tayo dito sa Node.js. So HTML, we can't directly connect to MongoDB. So HTML muna, Node, MongoDB, balik ng data, then balik kay HTML. Gets? HTML is not a programming language. It is a markup language. Pero hindi siya Turing complete. Meaning you can't program anything. You can't program everything in HTML. So, hindi siya programming language. Questions? I know may questions kayo. Ay, yes, sorry. Oo, next class na pala nyo. Oops. Ko na notice. Sige, if may questions kayo, magtanong lang kayo sa ano, magtanong lang kayo sa general to answer them. Basta yung goal natin ng class na to is again, matuto kayo mag-integrate. Matuto kayo mag-integrate with applications to MongoDB. Sige, yun lang.